Hello guys, Gaga here, and if you're going to the Extreme Force sneak peek on this weekend on January 27th and 28th, this is the video number 1 to watch. I did several guides for sneak peeks in the past and they were very well received, so I put a lot of work and effort into this video to bring you guys the best information about Extreme Force. We're gonna talk about all 100 cards, so let's begin. You need that knowledge because in this sneak you only get one shot. What I mean by this is that you have to be very careful what you're doing. One small mistake and you will lose the game. On the other hand, if you use the knowledge that I give you in this video and you pull somehow decent cards from your packs, you can easily outplay your opponent, especially the ones that are completely unprepared. In my opinion, a lot of new players will be completely overwhelmed by the amount of column-based cards in this set. They don't know what to do, they will place their cards in columns without thinking about it. After watching this video, you clearly have the advantage. You will know the win options, you know the next level plays, you know how to side deck even, and so what card combinations are good, how you can win with deck out, all that stuff. This time you can win the beautiful Excode Talker playmat that you see right now on screen. The sneak promo card this time is World Legacy Scars, a feat spell that boosts the attack of your Mech Knight monsters more into those monsters later on and has some nice drawing effect. Normally at this point of my guides I would talk about everything that beginners need to know, for example what the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sneak peek is and what happens there, what the special rules are for this event. The reason I'm not doing this is because I already did this multiple times, so if you're a new player, if you never went to sneak before, or if you're new in Yu-Gi-Oh! I would advise you to click the link down in the description to check out my sneak peek guide for Circuit Break. In the first 3 to 4 minutes I will teach you everything that you need to know. There are also timestamps in the video, so you can jump right to the part that you want to watch. But back to Extreme Force, I will give you some general advice for the set, some specific advice, and I would highly recommend to watch that specific advice section, it's very important. As always, you can see the timestamps right now on screen, just feel free to jump to the section that interests you the most. And obviously we're gonna talk about all 100 cards later on. One last thing, I have to point this out again, this guide is for open dueling only. This is not for constructed format. Very important, if you're not sure and want to find out if your closest gaming store has the open dueling or constructed sneak, just click on the 2 links in the description. One of them is for Europe and one is for America. Click on your flag and you can find your locals. There are all the necessary information already in a table, but let's finally begin the guide. So here are some general advice. If you watch my past guides, you're gonna realize that this is just a 1-for-1 copy. Why? Because this is just a reminder. You will get to important information specific to the sneak in a minute. So generalize number 1, this is a sneak, you wanna play with a 20 card deck. Deck outs can happen. There are a lot of 3000 defensive walls and even worse, or even cards that completely restrict you from attacking. So decking out on the sneak is absolutely possible. Second advice, sneak peeks are like old school Yu-Gi-Oh! So monsters with high attack, removal and field presence is everything that you need. Even if you go like -1 or -2 to summon a big monster with a big attack stat, it doesn't matter, it was completely worth it because that monster will win you the game. Third advice, bring something to eat and to drink. For some people this point might be weird, but trust me, the event is very long, 5 to 6 hours. You will spend a lot of time waiting between rounds and sooner or later you will get hungry or thirsty. You will not be able to focus on the game and make stupid mistakes. Next is just a small checklist like always. Do you have your pen, a piece of paper, a coin, a dice, a calculator, your smartphone, sleeves and a playmat? And fifth advice, don't brag around with your pulls. This happened also on the last sneak and it happens all the time. People show you their secret rares, their most powerful cards. You already know who has the best cards after they bragged around. You don't want this to happen. Keep your cards to yourself so you have the surprise factor on your side. And last advice, don't play too many high level monsters. On this sneak it's kinda an exception because there are a lot of high level monsters that can special summon themselves from the hand, but in general don't play like level 5 or higher monsters, just like 3 or 4 at most. And yeah, that's all for the more generic advice. Now let's get to the important part of the video. Let's talk about more specific and important informations that you want to use to win your games. A big point of Extreme Force are the previously mentioned Mech-Knights. Those are high level monsters that you can special summon from your hand. If there are 2 or more cards in the same column, you can special summon them to that column. For example, you control a set, spell or trap card in one column and your opponent has a monster in the same column. Then you can special summon that Mech-Knight to the same column those cards are in. If you pull a lot of Mech-Knights, even the most useless spells or traps, except of course feed spells, are somehow useful because you can just simply set them in the same column that your opponent already has a card and then special summon your Mech-Knights from your hand. But beware, your opponent could also set spell and trap cards in the same column to special summon their Mech-Knights and overwhelm you. So you see already the mind games right there, and this is what I will teach you also during this guide, how to avoid this, how to use certain cards so that only you can special summon your Mech-Knights from the hand and not your opponent. My next more specific advice is the basic attack value of the sneak is very high, 2000 to 2300. This is really high. The main quality of the cards for the sneak peek on the set is really good. Besides that, every stat under like 1600 is pretty weak. Even like 1800 attack is okay, but not that impressive like it normally is. There are multiple normal level 4 monsters that have like 2000 attack, or one that even gets to 2300 attack with a normal summon. But in general, if you can summon a monster with like 2300 or more attack, I would consider the threat on the sneak, or in other words, a win option. Those are the monsters that you really want to summon. One more thing when it comes to stats. There are a few monsters with impressive defensive values on the sneak, 2800 or 3000, and it's nearly no removal on the sneak. Which brings me to my next point. Together with those walls, there are spell and traps that completely prevent you from attacking or doing anything. And this means there are sadly could be some really disgusting situations during the sneak where both players simply cannot attack and just are decking out. And this is why you should play more than 20 cards. And while we are talking about spells and traps, you don't have to worry about face down spell and traps on the sneak too much. On other sneaks there's like this one really broken spell or trap that your opponent could have face down, something that could completely wipe out your entire board. This is not the case on this sneak. There are only like 5 potential threats that you can run into, and even those are very specific and aren't that strong. And you don't have to worry if you have spell and trap destruction, which is very rare on the sneak. Don't waste it on face down spell and traps that your opponent has. Just use them on face up spell and traps because they are way more dangerous. Next advice, play as many extra deck monsters as possible, even if you can't summon them. This is just for the mind games, so skilled players might overthink certain situations, might think that you can summon a very dangerous monster which you don't even pull out of your packs. So this is something that's very simple that you can do just to increase your winning chances. And last but not least, we of course have to talk about columns. Columns are very important on the sneak. If you haven't figured it out, like there are so many column based cards, you really have to worry where to put your cards. And you don't want to put 2 cards in the same column, obviously, for reasons that we already discussed, so their opponent cannot special summon their Mech-Knights, but also you don't want to use the most left and the most right zones, because those are the new pendulum zones. That means that if your opponent has pendulum cards, they can just activate them and easier special summon their Mech-Knights. There are also cards that have special effects in the most left and the most right column. Just try to avoid to use those columns if possible. I'm not gonna say that you have to, but the most left and the most right column are the columns where cards can easier be destroyed than the other columns. So this is just something that I want to talk about. Also, if you want a monster effect to go off, you mainly want to use the middle column. The middle column is the most safe column of all of them on the sneak, and it gets more dangerous the more you go to the left and to the right side. So if you don't know where to put your cards, the middle column is the right column for your monsters. Just want to point that out. And the last specific advice for Extreme Force, know your win options. There are a lot of ways that you can win. Probably you have like 1 or 2 of those that I will mention, and you have to make the most out of them. You really have to keep your combo pieces in your hand for the right moment, because as I already pointed out, if you can make the right move at the right time, you can win the field control, you will win the sneak. So what you can do, for example, is summon a bunch of level 4 monsters with a high attack, just normal beatdown. You can also do this with Mech Knights. It's kind of similar. Also, Tindangle monsters are pretty good. There are a lot of common Tindangle cards, and overall they are pretty good and work really well together. You could also just play a store deck that decks your opponent out. So in the worst case scenario, if you don't pull anything good, you can just play a lot of cards in your deck, like 25 cards, and just try to deck your opponent out with some really annoying spell and trap cards and huge defensive monsters. So that's it, and now we come to my favorite part, also probably the part you've all been waiting for, my review of all 100 cards from the set. My opinion about them and how good they are, some tips and tricks, and trust me, there's so much stuff to talk about, so let's get right into it. Don't waste any more time, because otherwise this video is gonna be 2 hours long. As always, the 100 cards will have a colorful border. The color will immediately show you how good the card is, but this time I made some slight changes to the colors. This time the completely useless cards are tier 5 cards, and they will have a black border. Keep in mind what I said earlier, in theory even the most useful spells and traps can at least be used to special summon the Mech Knights from your hand. I'm bringing this up again so that I don't have to repeat myself 20 times in this video. And the tier 4 cards, they have a red border. Those are pretty bad, but there are few of them in certain situations that you actually want to play, because they work with a lot of archetype specific cards, but you need a lot of setup. So those could be useful in certain situations, but don't expect them to perform very well or do a lot. Tier 3 cards or yellow cards are the most average ones. Those are just decent cards that you can play. Those are like 1400 attack or 1600 defense monsters, or some spell and traps with decent effects. So nothing special, but playable. Tier 2 cards are green, and they are pretty damn good. Low level monsters with very high stats, for example, some really decent 1-tribute or 2-tribute monsters, some decent spell and trap removal, something like that. And then there are tier 1 cards that are even stronger. They have a blue border and kind of break the rules. They are very powerful and win you the most games. So try to get as many blue cards as possible, and especially pay attention when I talk about a blue card in this guide. Those are the dangerous ones that you will win with or lose to. And then there are actually the tier 0 cards. Those are the most broken cards. They have a violet border, and there's one card in the set that really deserves this color. I bring this up later. It's a ridiculous card that basically instantly wins you the game. There is nearly nothing that your opponent can do unless they put like a certain secret rare. It's a really unfair card, but more into that later. One last thing before we go through all the 100 cards. Most of these cards are in Japanese because all the English cards have a low resolution. It's also easier for me to prepare for these kinds of videos because informations are normally leaked only a few days before the sneak, and this guide takes a very long time to make. So just memorize the artworks. Also, most names are not official and will probably change. Again, pay attention to the artworks only. Also, I stepped up my game a little bit for you, so you can also see now the effects on screen, the level, and all the information about the monsters. I really hope you like this change. Leave a like if you enjoy that. And after all, I had to do this for 100 cards, so you can imagine how much work this was. So okay, let's finally begin. And first we have a spirit pendulum monster called Card Spirit Kuno-oh. This card is good because it has a pendulum scale of 9. With no restrictions. That's insane. It even works well with the only other pendulum monsters in the set and allow you to pendulum summon high level monsters from your hand up to level 8. The best thing, after you pendulum summon this card, it returns to your hand. That seems like a downside, but it's actually an upside. So your opponent cannot simply set spell and trap cards in this pendulum zone and special summon Mech Knights afterwards. Also, all the other pendulum monsters, so-called mythical beasts in the set, they don't get the effects if there's a pendulum card in the other pendulum zone. So this card kind of works around that, so which is really nice. There's a lot of synergy there. There are even more things we need to discuss with this card. You can normal summon this card And if you do, all spell and trap cards in the columns as your pendulum scales are sent to the graveyard on your opponent's side on field. So the most left and the most right spell and trap your opponent controls in their column are sent to the graveyard. So this is why I told you earlier to not place too many cards in the most left and most right columns, because there's also another card here that can send monsters to the graveyard. Now I would not normal summon this because it's spirit monster and returns to your hand during the end of the turn. You lose a lot of field presence, but this only happens if it's normal summoned. You can still pendulum summon this and then it stays on the field. But the problem with this is you need 2 copies of this, because this is the only good scale to pendulum summon in the set. All the other ones are either pendulum scale 4s or 1s, so pendulum summoning isn't a thing besides with this card, and this is why this card kind of breaks the rules and is that strong. So next we have a simple yet effective card. This is Zombino. It's another blue card, and this is a short print. A short print means this is a common, but it's multiple times more rare than a normal common, so not a lot of people have this. It's a level 4 monster with 2000 attack, also 0 defense, but it doesn't matter because there's only one card, as far as I know, that can change the battle position of a monster that you control. So simply summon this and beat over your opponent's monster. It's that easy. Again, it's simple but very good. It gets the job done. Next up we have Lockout Gardna. This is another card that we have to discuss a lot of things about. If your opponent attacks you directly, you can special summon it from your hand, and it cannot be destroyed by battle for the rest of the turn. You have to summon it in attack position, you still take battle damage, but honestly, who cares? Then next turn you can use this, for example, for a link summon, for example, a card called Flame Administrator, which has 2000 attack, or you can also tribute this card, which gives you the clear field advantage and advances your game and lets you win games. Also, that means if you attack your opponent directly, keep this card in mind. So if you already saw that your opponent has this card in game 1, you're going to game 2 or 3, you should be a little bit more careful while attacking directly. Some players might even use this to simply pass without doing anything, and then they take direct damage. So if your opponent does nothing and just passes, they probably have this card in hand, so be careful what you're doing. And yes, I know this card also can negate monster effects that target cyber type monsters, but this effect is very specific. This effect of Lockout Gardna works together with our next card, Stripping Partner. Honestly, I don't want to talk about this card, but I kinda have to. It can't even be normal summoned and basically can only be summoned by Lockout Gardna or some very specific other scenarios. So if your opponent would target one of your cyber type monsters, so then you can special summon it from your hand. And you should get the problem. This card is too specific and the payoff is simply not there. Don't play this. You will only summon this like once or not even once during the entire tournament, trust me. So the 5th card in the set is Flick Clown, a monster with an effect that only works if you control 2 or more cyber type monsters, have no cards in your hand and pay 1000 life points. Yeah, as if that would happen on a sneak. And the payoff, drawing 1 card. Congrats, on a sneak, drawing cards isn't like the best effect. Your deck contains only 20 cards, so you deck out earlier. And by the way, one thing is probably the biggest misplay somebody could make actually by trying to get this effect off. Setting all their spell and traps from the hand just to have no other cards in hand. So that just means in the worst case scenario your opponent can special summon like 3 Mech Knights next turn from their hand. So don't do that. It's basically just a normal monster with 1000 attack and 1400 defense. Only play this if you can link summon into Cyber's type link monsters with it, otherwise don't play it. Or you could just simply use the next card, which is called Bit Looper. 1500 attack is decent, 2000 defense is very good, and it even has the option to special summon itself from the hand by discarding a low level monster, letting you build up your field. You can link summon, you could tribute. So this is overall a very good card, absolutely playable. Next we come to a card that is very hard to judge. This is Battling War Dragon. It is a very long effect. In short, you can only summon this if you link summon, and then both players can only link summon link 2 or lower monsters. But now we come to the important part. As long as this card is on the field, only linked monsters can attack. Oh boy, to be fair, there are plenty of link monsters in this set, but they cannot beat over 2100 defense walls like this. So there might be games where both players can't do anything and just gonna deck out. That actually might happen thanks to this card. Maybe I'm overhyping this card, but this card is reason enough to play at least 21 cards in your deck so you don't deck out. Next we're gonna talk about Shell Rocket Dragon. This is a nice 2000 defensive fall. If it's spoiled by battle or by card effect, you can just special summon the other rocket monster that is in the set from your deck, which is pretty nice. And also it has an effect to destroy cards in columns and the adjacent monsters in those columns. You can actually get this effect off with a Link 2 monster called Underclock Taker in the set. I will discuss Underclock Taker later on. It's pretty powerful in theory, but needs a lot of setup. This is not gonna happen very often. I think only in like the insane stall situations that you could be in where nobody can attack. Next we have its counterpart, Metal Rocket Dragon, a level 4 with 1700 attack. You can also use Underclock Taker in combination with this card to destroy your opponent's card in the same column as this card. And it also floats into Shell Rocket Dragon, which is pretty nice. So if you have Shell Rocket Dragon and this card together, definitely play them because they float and you can tribute them and do a lot of cool stuff. Next we have to talk about a really dangerous card, a card that in combination with another card can win you games, a lot of games. That card is called Tindangle Angel. This is level 4 with 1800 defense. It can special summon a flip effect monster from your hand or graveyard in face down defense position. And this card can also be activated if this card is activated in your opponent's battle phase, the battle phase immediately ends. So why is this a tier 1 card for the sneak? Well, there's another Tindangle card called Tindangle Hound. That card not only has 2500 attack, but it can even raise its attack above that. Even over the 3000 attack point, which allows you to run over basically anything in this entire set. And very likely you will win the game. Also don't forget this card can even special summon every flip effect monster, not only Tindangle monsters. On top of that, there's an absolute broken continuous Tindangle spell card in the set, which basically makes this card indestructible. Plus the fact that Tindangle Hound can flip this card face down again with its own effect, so you can recycle Tindangle Hound and special summon it back from the graveyard over and over again. So you get the idea, this card is really damn powerful. And there are not a lot of counters to this card, so this is one of the best cards on the entire sneak. At least if you have Tindangle Hound. And I would advise you to wait until you have this combination in your hand and then go for it and probably win you the game from there. So the next card is also pretty good. Tindangle Base Gardna, level 5 with 0 attack and 2300 defense. So not only a nice defensive wall, you can also special summon it if you control a set monster, which is pretty easy to achieve. This card has a very specific special summon effect, but I don't feel like it's that important. Just simply do not summon monsters into zones, link monsters you control point to, while your opponent controls this base Gardna on their field, and you should be fine. Last thing that's worth being mentioned about this card, there's a pretty strong Link 3 monster in the set that requires you to have this card in the graveyard. The Link monster is just a common, so this card is actually pretty solid. And here it is, Tindangle Hound. We talked so much about it when we talked about Tindangle Angel. This is a level 7, again with 2500 attack, which is decent. Even if you don't have Angel, this is still a nice 2-tribute monster. It can increase its attack even further, but normally I would normal summon this if I don't have Tindangle Angel, because obviously it has 0 defense. So the flip effect of this card allows you to flip a monster on the field face down. You can use this to flip an opponent's monster face down to attack over it, or you can use it on your own Tindangle or flip effect monsters to use their effects again. Overall pretty good card, even if you have no copy of Tindangle Angel. Next is Tindangle Apostle. This card lets you flip up other set monsters and lets you add Tindangle cards from your deck to your hand. At least in theory, another card with Mythical stats that will never get its effect off on the sneak ever. I would not recommend playing this unless you have that really broken continuous Tindangle support card that we will discuss later on. Otherwise, don't play this. Next we have a very interesting card, Tindangle Intruder. This is already a solid 1-tribute monster with 2200 attack. It can also search Tindangle monsters when it's flipped face up, but again it also has 0 defense, so you mainly want to normal summon this if you tribute summon it. Okay, it also can send a Tindangle monster from your deck to graveyard, for example base Gardna, which is not bad. And the last effect lets it special summon from the grave if you special summon a monster face down. So for example, with the effect of Angel. So what you could do is the following: triple summon this in attack position, then if it's destroyed, set Tindangle Angel, special summon Hound from the hand, and then you could special summon this card from the graveyard as well. And you have 2 really good beatsticks on the field. And now pay attention, we will talk about the Mech Knights. Mech Knight of the Blue Sky is a secret rare, so maybe one person on the sneak will have this. It can be special summoned if there are 2 cards in the same column, and has a powerful search effect that lets you add, in the best case scenario, up to 3 Mech Knight monsters from the deck to the hand. So that's probably wins you the game if you get this off. This card is even pretty good for a triple summon, 2000 attack, 2500 defense are solid. Next we have probably the weakest of the 7 Mech Knights. This is just a common. Even this one is pretty good. Mech Knights of the Green Heights can be special summoned, like all the other Mech Knights if there are 2 or more cards in the same column to that column. This card has overall the weakest stats of the Mech Knight, but whenever a Mech Knight monster declares an attack, you can add 1 Mech Knight from your grave back to your hand. So even this, the worst of all the Mech Knights, has still 2100 attack and a really good effect. You already see how powerful the Mech Knights are and why they are so important for the sneak peek. So next up we have Mech Knight of the Flickering Flame, 3000 defense. There's like nothing that can really harm this. It only has the 3000 defense, it has an effect, but it's not important. You can special summon Mech Knights from your hand, but only under very specific situations. So, but honestly, it doesn't need more. The 3000 defense is enough to keep any harm away from you. Like, your opponent can't do anything. There's not a lot of removal on the sneak, so destroying this is really, really tough, and I don't think a lot of people will manage to get consistently over 3000 defense. So it's simply that tough and will probably cause some deckouts on the sneak. So you can just also triple this and set and watch your opponent while they attack into 3000 defense wall, which probably looks pretty funny. And here's another big wall, which is a rare. Mech Knight of the Yellow Plume has 2800 defense and even 2200 attack. So overall ridiculous good stats. It can also destroy spells and traps in the same column, but be careful, there are spell and traps on the sneak which have effects in the graveyard, and even some get benefits if they are destroyed. So my advice, only use its spell and trap destruction effect to destroy face up spell and trap cards. Trust me, face down spell and traps don't possess a big threat anywhere on the sneak. And then we have its counterpart, Mech Knight of the Crimson Lotus, which is kinda like Yellow Plume, but instead of destroying spell and traps, it can destroy monsters. Pretty good stats with 2300 attack and 2600 defense, and also pretty good effect. By the way, one of the very few monster removal effects on the sneak, so use this card wisely. And next we have a super rare Mech Knight of the Azure Blue. This guy can switch columns and has overall really decent stats with 2400 attack and 2400 defense. This card doesn't seem that strong at first, but trust me, this is much stronger than you might think. First of all, 2400 is above average and is considered a real threat on the sneak. So after you summon this, you can switch columns. This way your opponent is probably not able to summon their Mech Knights, or you could even summon another Mech Knight after Azure Blue to build up your field. And last but not least, the Mech Knight spell and traps negate effects in the same column as your Mech Knight. So you can negate your opponent's effects by switching columns during your opponent's turn. And there's even one more thing. If your opponent sets a spell or trap in the same column as this card, you can switch columns to prevent your opponent from special summoning their Mech Knights from the hand. So overall, this is a very strong card with a lot of next level tricks that you can use to build up your field and prevent your opponent from special summoning their Mech Knights from the hand. Next, the last Mech Knight, which is in my opinion the best one. This is sadly also a secret rare. Mech Knight of the Purple Dusk not only has 2500 attack, he can also search Mech Knight monsters by banishing himself. If you just want to search with him, just do it in your opponent's end phase and then he comes back during your turn. But you can also use this to switch simply columns. Your opponent will not be able to special summon Mech Knights from their hand, kinda like with Azure Blue. And of course you can also use this effect to prevent him from being destroyed or targeted. So this card is really hard to get rid of. Again, this is secret rare, not a lot of people have this, maybe 1 or 2 people. But it's overall ridiculously strong, one of the best beat sticks on the entire sneak. The next card works pretty well in combination with our sneak preview card. So World Legacy World Cheat is another 3000 defensive wall that also can even special summon itself from the graveyard back, but then your opponent can special summon monster from the hand. But honestly, who cares, because who gets over 3000 defense? Nothing. this card has too much defense. There are no monsters on the sneak that could be a threat for this. So overall a good card. I would simply set this and wait for my opponent's reaction. Then when they attack into my 3000 defense monster, it should look funny. Next we have the Mythical Beasts. Those are pendulum monsters that all have the pendulum scale of 4. You cannot use the effects if you have another pendulum card in your another pendulum zone. So if you want to pendulum summon anywhere, you want to use the first card from the set, card to Spirit Kuno-oh, in combination with them. The first Mythical Beast is Mythical Beast Jackal. You can destroy him in the pendulum zone and give one of your Mythical Beasts a spell counter. Also, if there are 3 or more spell counters on it, you can tribute it to special summon the Mythical Beast monster from your deck. Overall not that great unless you pull some of the high rarity, high level Mythical Beasts, because then if you can amass spell counters on this, he can become very dangerous, but otherwise I wouldn't recommend playing this. But the next card is pretty great. Mythical Beast Garuda is sadly an ultra rare and the most generic spell and trap removal on this entire sneak. Simply activate this in the pendulum zone. Maybe even special summon Mech Knight, destroy a spell and trap card your opponent controls, then it's also destroyed and your opponent cannot simply special summon their Mech Knights in the same color. Again, a reminder, don't worry about face down spells and traps, they are not worth being destroyed, just destroy the face up spell and traps we're gonna discuss later, they are much more dangerous. Save this card in your hand, just don't waste this. But its monster effect is also pretty strong as well. You can move 3 spell counters to bounce back an opponent's monsters, but only on the summon of that monster. Very effective and game winning in my opinion against extra deck monsters, then it's really worth it. But again, use this wisely against face up spell and traps. Don't waste this card, it's probably the only spell and trap removal that you will have on the sneak. Next we have Mythical Beast Medusa, a monster with solid 1500 attack and defense. It can half the attack and defense of opponent's monster, but it requires 2 spell counters on the field to do this. If you have a lot of Mythical Beasts and enough ways to amass spell counters, this is a very strong card. But if you don't have those options, then this card is just Mythical at best. But honestly, I don't think this will be the case. The Mythical Beasts overall have very high rarity, so you probably will have like 1 or 2 of them. But maybe you get lucky and you can use this card to your advantage. If your opponent is attacking into one of your monsters, you can just remove 2 spell counters to just reduce the attack of the attacking monster, and then it's destroyed, and then you can build up your field and attack directly for game. And now we come to Mythical Beast Basilisk. Its effect aren't that important, it just can recycle cards from the extra deck, but overall it's just an 1800 beat stick that also is a pendulum monster, that's it. Still pretty nice card because of its attack stats. And next we need to talk about one of the best, maybe even the best one tribute monster in the set. Mythical Beast King Jackal is an ultra rare, level 6 with 2400 attack. Again, 2400 is very strong in the sneak. Even better, this card can negate monster effects by using spell counters on the field. So don't activate monster effects if your opponent has this card with at least 2 counters on it. Try not to activate spell cards if your opponent has this, because this card immediately will get 2 counters and then it can negate monster effects and destroy them. So a very dangerous card. But it gets even better. If Pendulum effect is also really strong, it can destroy itself in the pendulum zone to special summon Mythical Beast face up from your extra deck. So you could activate this card in the pendulum zone, special summon Basilisk or Medusa for example from your extra deck, and then tribute it for a tribute summon. And now pay attention, we will talk about the most powerful 1-card combo in the entire sneak. All you need is the following card: Mythical Beast Master Cerberus and a Mythical Beast King Jackal in your deck. To be fair, Master Cerberus is a secret rare and King Jackal ultra rare, so not a lot of people will have this combo, but it's simply so strong I have to talk about it. Simply place Master Cerberus in the pendulum zone, destroy it, search King Jackal, then place King Jackal in the pendulum zone, destroy it, and special summon Master Cerberus from your extra deck. A 2800 beat stick that cannot be destroyed under certain situations and also can banish opponent's monster, and it's one of the few monster removal effects on the sneak, so this card is insane. Master Cerberus, in my opinion, probably the best 2-tribute monster in this entire set. Each time a spell is activated, it gets 2 counters. If there are 4 or more counters on this card, then it cannot be destroyed by card effects. You can remove 4 counters from it to banish one monster your opponent controls, and then it gains attack equal to the attack of that banished monster until the end of your opponent's turn, which probably lets this card rise to like 4000 attack. It can run over any threat your opponent has on the field. This card is absolutely game winning if you can summon this, even if it's tribute summoned. It's ridiculously strong, hard to kill. It has a removal effect. What more do you want? This card is insane. Next we have Artifact Mjolnir. I hope I pronounced that right. Overall a very specific card that needs to be destroyed during your opponent's turn in the spell and trap zone and simply doesn't have a good payoff. Because you need multiples of this, and even if you tribute it, it's not worth it. Like, the stats of this card are also really bad. 1300 attack, 1800 defense for level 5 are just awful. And this is another reason why you don't want to destroy face down cards with your spell and trap removal. But I honestly wouldn't recommend playing this. Next we have Angrappler, a level 1 monster with only 100 attack. If this card attacks your opponent directly and inflicts battle damage, you can special summon a monster from your graveyard, doesn't matter which level. Add no restriction at all on this effect in defense position. Seems pretty good, but sadly the stats are so bad. There's one reason I would use this card, and that is because this is a tuner and you can special summon the level 9 FA monster from the set. So if you have that FA monster, maybe this card is worth running, otherwise I would not recommend playing this. Now there's one insane combo which needs a lot of different cards. If you pendulum summon this with 2 level 4s and the help of the scale 9 pendulum monster, then the FA synchro is pretty easy to make. But again, this needs a lot of setup, I know that, but I just want to point it out. Next card is Janshimatsu, a solid 2000 defensive war that is also a flip effect, so it pairs well with the Tindangle monsters. Its flip effect allows you to draw a card and then discard one. This is, for example, very good with Tindangle Intruder. Also a few spell and traps in the set have really good graveyard effects, so this is an option to trigger them without using their field effects. But honestly, I wouldn't use this effect unless I can advance my game to a point where I really can get the field advantage. Because just digging through your deck might end out in a deck out, but this card as it is right now is already strong enough with 2000 defense. That's also a good wall already, so a decent card, absolutely playable. Next up we have a really skillful card. This is DD Pursuer. It can banish one of your own monsters, even itself, till the end of the next turn. So how do you use this card? You can use this card after you summon it, then it returns to your opponent's end phase, and next turn you can tribute it or link summon, whatever you want. Or you use it to dodge removal to protect one of your strong monsters from destruction. Or you could even use this card to banish a monster and then next turn change the column it's special summoned in to prevent your opponent from special summoning Mech Knights from the hand. It's also an option. You could also banish another Mech Knight you control and then special summon another Mech Knight from your hand, because obviously there are already 2 cards in the same column. So there are a lot of options that you have for this card. But keep one thing in mind: if you use this card during your opponent's turn, that monster will return during your end phase. So basically you just wasted an entire turn without that monster. So I would use this effect even if you get a little bit of life point damage during your turn and then next turn advance my game from there. But overall, as you can see, a very versatile monster with a lot of next level plays, a lot of things that you can use to really advance your game. So pretty good card, if you use it the right way at least. And now pay attention, we need to talk about one of the best cards from the set, in my opinion even the second best card from the entire set. Clara is an effect monster that gains effect based on its placement on the field, so based on the column it's in. The most important out of the 4 effects that it has or can get is the one if it's in the most left column. In that column it gains 1000 attack, 2300 attack for a normal summon. That is absolutely insane. This card can attack over so much stuff. It's insane threat for just a normal summon. There are gonna be a lot of these cards on the sneak, so worry a lot about this card. I will teach you later on a few cards how to get rid of this card and how to use it even better. This is a level 4 that can even attack over a lot of level 5 and level 6 monsters in the set. It's far the best normal summon in this set in my opinion, and I really hope you pull as many as possible from your packs, because this card is simply that good. Now if you place this in a left and right, not the most left and not the most right column, it can negate monster effects in the same column or prevent them from activating their effects. This can be nice if you know that your opponent has like a Tindangle Angel set and you can attack into it, but this is the only situations where I actually would potentially summon this in another column except the most left one. Next we have Desmania Devil. This is beast type monster with 1700 attack and 1400 defense, and if it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can add a level 4 or lower beast type monster from your deck to your hand. This is the only beast type monster in the entire set that you can search anyway, so you need 2 copies to make a search. 1700 attack is still decent, so you can play it, but nothing too special. Now we come to a very interesting card that I want to talk a little bit longer about. This is Starter Transavatar Wattkinesis. This is a 1800 beat stick, so already good on its own. And it has a quick effect. You can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard and target one monster your opponent controls. Move the target to another of your opponent's main monster zones. So how can you use this card? You can use this card obviously as a counter to Mythical by just switching its columns, and that it only has 1300 attack. You can also use this effect simply to switch your opponent's monsters in another column, and then you can special summon your Magnates from your hand. Very versatile, but even then it has 1800 attack, so already decent on its own. And the best thing, you can even send this card face up from your side on the field if you already normal summon it to the graveyard to trigger its effect, so a very good card. And next up we come to another secret rare. This is Inspect Border. So if you have no monsters, you can just normal summon this, but you can still set it even if you control another monster. In each turn, each player can only attempt to activate monster effect up to the number of monsters of different types: Ritual Fusion, Synchro, XYZ, Pendulum, and Link on the field. So if there are 2 Link monsters on the field, both players can only activate 2 monster effects per turn. That means if there are no such monsters on the field, nobody can use monster effects. This is a hard counter to Tindangle Angel. This is very important. This card counters a lot of other stuff. It also has insane stats for a level 4. This card is just a huge beat stick, and it even has a very nice floodgate effect. Ridiculous card. Be happy if you draw this. Next we come to the first completely useless card on the sneak. This is Overtyke's Cordless, and it requires you to shuffling 5 of your banished dinosaur monsters back into your deck. There are no other dinosaurs in this entire set, so you don't have to worry about this card at all. Next is Contacting Sea. So when your opponent normal or special summons a monster except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field in defense position, and then the effect it gives you your opponent. If you would Fusion, Synchro, or Link summon, you must use this face-up card on the field as material. This is a card that I only will use in 2 situations. The first one is just tribute your own monster to set this as a 2200 defensive wall. And the other option is you can special summon this to your opponent's side on the field that they cannot Link summon. So for example, you want to prevent that your opponent, for example, Link summons a Cybers type Link monster, which requires obviously Cybers monsters as materials, to special summon their Battlelink Wall Dragon from the hand. Then Contacting Sea is kinda nice, but keep in mind you're giving your opponent a monster with somehow decent stats. Honestly, this thing is much better probably if you just set it to your own side on the field and use it as a 1-tribute, but I honestly wouldn't play this because there are better 1-tributes in this set. So now we come to the Link monsters or the Extra deck monsters. The first one is Excode Talker, the cover monster of the set. This is really hard to summon. You need 3 Link monsters, and then the payoff isn't really there. First of all, I don't think that you would summon this in the main monster zone, and only shutting down 1 column your opponent has, or in the best case 2, isn't that strong on the sneak. So honestly, this is just a mediocre core card. Underclock Taker, this is a really bad card, but you can use it together with the rocket monsters in the set. You can trigger the rocket monster effects by targeting them with this card, which is pretty nice, and then you can destroy your opponent's cards. If there's a situation where both players cannot attack and you're just summoning monsters and setting monsters and ending your turn, there might be situations where you are able to summon this and have a Shell Rocket Dragon or Metal Rocket Dragon on the same side on the field to actually get this off. Next up we have Vector Square Archfiend. This is 2400 beatstick, which is basically a better version of Excode Talker, mainly because of its link arrows and also its effect. you contribute a monster that this card points to, special summon a monster this card destroyed by battle to your own zone or to your opponent's zone, and if you just special summon it to one of your opponent's zones, this card can make a second attack during the battle phase. But mainly you can steal your opponent's monsters. It's kind of like a Go-Yo Guardian, which is actually kind of good, but again, very hard to summon because you need 3 Cybers type monsters as materials, which will rarely happen. But if you get it off, this card is pretty good. Next we have probably one of the best Link monsters in the entire set, because it's very easy to summon. It only needs 2 Cybers monsters, and it also has decent enough effect to play it. It gets 800 attack, and it basically becomes 2000 attack. This is pretty good, definitely playable, and I would highly recommend to put this card in your extra deck. Next is Recover the Sorcerer. This is basically a worse version of Flame Administrator, because it's just a Cybers type Link monsters that also requires 2 Cybers monsters with an effect that is very situational. It can special summon back destroyed monsters from the grave, but they are destroyed during the end phase anyway, so I don't see the use in this card honestly. I would not summon this, like there's not a real reason. This is Acute Gardna. Its effect isn't that important, only once per turn you can halve battle damage you take for the first time, which is okay, and it also cannot be used as a Link material. Next we have probably the most generic and easiest to summon Link monster in the entire set, which is 3 Burst Blast Dragon. This is a monster that simply requires only 3 monsters except tokens, and it does piercing damage and has 2400 attack. That's all. It also has 2 other effects, but they will not come up on the sneak. It's just a piercing with 2400 attack. Pretty good anyway. Be happy if you pull this. And here we have the big boy, Tindangle Acute Cerberus. This card needs a little bit of setup, but if you can get it consistently, this card kind of breaks the rules. This card can attack even if your opponent has Battling Wall Dragon on the field. It can attack even over 3000 defensive walls because it can increase its attack. This is a very strong card. The only downside is it only gains its 3000 attack if you have a Tindangle base Gardna on the graveyard, and also it requires 3 Tindangle monsters to summon. There's also a trap card in the set, which we will discuss later, which can also summon this. So beware of this card. Next up is a completely useless card. Altergeist Hexia cannot be summoned because there are no other Altergeist monsters in the set, so you simply cannot special summon this from the extra deck. Then we have Mech Knight of the World Scars. This is a Mech Knight boss monster. This card is basically indestructible, it cannot be targeted, can even attack your opponent directly, and it can also special summon Mech Knight monsters from your deck. Everything is insane. The problem is you need 3 Mech Knight monsters. The Mech Knights are more or less high rarity, so I don't think you will summon this easily. But if you can, you probably win the game. And then we have Skull Threads, the Chained Draco Serpent, or how it's now called, Saryuja Skull Thread. The only Link 4 in the entire set. You only need monsters with different names, which should be a problem on the sneak. If you use 2 or more monsters with different names, all the monsters this card points to basically get 300 attack and defense, so which is insane on the sneak peek. Just boost all your monsters with 300 attack and defense is very strong on the sneak. Once per turn, if you use 3 or more names, you can special summon monster from your hand, which is again even more ridiculous, advances your game state, gives you your huge beat stakes, you can run over your opponent, beat them down, very important. And fourth effect, if it's Link summoned you can draw 4 cards, then place 2 cards on your hand on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you summon this, you should win anyway. Honestly, I wouldn't trigger the last effect just to prevent decking out. The card on its own is so ridiculous you don't even need that last effect. The only exception would be if you have like a really strong monster in your deck that you want to have in your hand, so you can special summon it with its second effect from the hand, then go for it, because again that monster will also be boosted by 300 attack and defense. So this card, if you summon it, you probably win the game, but it's a secret rare, so maybe 1 or 2 persons will have this card. Next up we have a Link 1 monster with 0 attack. This is Ventriloquist, Clara and Rushka. This is a really bad card. The only upside to this card is on the sneak that you can use face down defense position monsters during your main phase to summon this. So if you have, for example, a Tindangle monster face down and you really want a Link monster to Link summon into something else, then go ahead, this card isn't that bad. Next, a lot of people will completely be surprised that Duel the Chimera is a useless card. Maybe I overlooked something, I double checked this, there aren't any other fire monsters in this entire set that are not extra deck monsters. So you can't even summon this card. And now we come to the spell cards. The first one is a pretty bad one. It can only be activated if you have Skull Threat on the field because it requires a Link 4 or higher monster on your side on the field to be activated. Then you can destroy cards up to the Link 3 or higher monsters you control, which is basically just gonna be one destruction. If you summon Skull Threat, you should win anyway. Next up is a very dangerous card that I'm kinda afraid of. This is Fire Prison with a very long effect. All you need to know, dragon monsters on the field gain 300 defense, so kinda good for your rocket monsters. But the important part is, neither player can link summon a monster with a lower link rating than a link monster on the field, and monsters cannot attack except link monsters. Oh boy, this is annoying. This is really annoying, kinda like battling War Dragon. This card completely restricts players from attacking. This is just dangerous. This is one of these spell and traps that you really want to get rid of, but there's not a lot of spell and trap removal on the sneak. This could be the reason why a lot of people deck out on the sneak. You really want to get rid of this card as soon as possible. Again, if you didn't pull that well, try to go for the deck out wins. Next we have a ultra rare. This is Revolve Boot Sector. This is very powerful if you have rocket monsters. You can basically special summon them back from the graveyard or from your hand and then triple summon them or link summon. Overall a really powerful card. It's pretty obvious to play this card if you have like 2 or 3 rocket monsters, then this card is really good. Otherwise I wouldn't play this. And here we come to one of the most broken cards on the entire sneak, Nagel's Protection, because it basically says that all Tindangle monsters in the main monster zone cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. This is a continuous effect. And the first time battle damage your Tindangle monsters inflict to your opponent each turn becomes double. This is an insane card. Basically you just set your Tindangle monsters and then they cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effect. It's just that insane, like you can just stall. This is why I told you that Tindangle Apostle, even though being not that good, can be useful. If you have at least like 2 or 3 other Tindangle monsters, definitely play this card. It's so annoying. Your opponent has to get rid of this, otherwise it's very hard to kill you. Next up we have another Tindangle support card, but this one is absolutely awful. But you control 3 or more Tindangle monsters, your opponent cannot declare an attack. Okay, that will probably not happen. And once per turn during your standby phase, you can target one Tindangle monster you control, give it to your opponent. I mean, the idea behind this was probably to increase the attack with your Cerberus, but on the sneak, this is the most situational of the most situational effects ever. So this is a card that I definitely would not recommend playing. And next up we have the Sneak promo card, World Legacy Scars. This card increases the attack of your Mech Knights and the defense also. This card also allows you to discard a World Legacy or Mech Knight card and then draw one card. The last effect is too situational, we won't discuss it. So you can discard World Legacy World Shield and then special summon it back during your next turn. But mainly I would use this to increase the attack and defense of your Mech Knights. There's one other reason: you can discard a Mech Knight and then use the effect of Mech Knight of the Crimson Lotus or Yellow Plume to banish them from the graveyard to destroy a card of your opponent's controls in the same column. That's also an option. So if you have like 3 or 4 Mech Knights at least, I would play this, otherwise I wouldn't. Next is another Mech Knight support card, Key to the World Legacy. When this card is activated, you can target one of your banished Mech Knight monsters or World Legacy cards added to your hand. When an opponent's trap card effect is activated in the same column as a Mech Knight monster, you can negate that effect. There aren't a lot of trap cards that you really want to negate, and there aren't a lot of situations in the sneak where you would recover banished Mech Knight's cards. So honestly, I think the only reason you want to play this is to special summon Mech Knights from the hand, or you can simply set this in the spell and trap card zone, but honestly this card isn't too great. Next up we have an Ultra, which is called Magical Boost. This card sets the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard and target 1 card on the field that you can place spell counters on and place 2 spell counters on it. This is a spell card you probably will treat it as another spell counters or 3 spell counters. This is ridiculously good if you have Mythical Beast Jackal to trigger its effect immediately. There's also Medusa, which is pretty good. This is a solid card, but only if I have a lot of mythical beasts, but they have a very high rarity, which probably won't be the case. One last thing, if that spell card is destroyed, you can special summon any card from your deck that you can place spell counters on, even Master Cerberus, and place 2 spell counters on Master Cerberus. This is again another reason why you don't destroy your opponent's spell and trap cards that are face down. just don't. In the worst case scenario, it's this card and your opponent special summons a Master Cerberus from the deck or a King Jackal from the deck. The next card is completely useless. Crow with the Noble Knights cannot be activated because there are no Noble Knight monsters in the set, so we just skip this. And now we come to the most important card of the entire sneak. This is the most broken card on the entire sneak peek. If you have this, you have a huge advantage over everybody who doesn't have this. So this card is called Power of the Guardians. It's an equipped spell card. When attack is declared involving the equipped monster, place one spell counter on this card. The equipped monster gains 500 attack and defense for each spell counter on this card. If the equipped monster would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can remove one spell counter from your field instead, not even from this card. So even if your opponent attacks the equipped monster gains 500 attack and also in addition cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effect. In other words, the equipped monster not only gets like at least like 1000 attack, but it also cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. This card is completely unfair on the sneak. This card allows you to attack over 3000 defense walls. It kind of breaks the entire sneak. If you have this, you have such a huge advantage over your opponents. Use this card on a monster that has at least 1800 attack and basically you just win from there. After you activated this, if your opponent doesn't have any spell and trap removal against this, they're just done. One more advice, don't place this in the same column as a monster that it's equipped to, because your opponent could special summon Magnets from the hand, you know what I mean. Even if this card is so broken, you don't even have to worry about Magnets that much. It's simply that strong. This is completely busted card. And by far the best card on the entire sneak. If you get multiples, you have good chances of winning this event. Next we have another secret rare, Pendulum Paradox. I would only play this card if you have at least 4 mythical beasts, which is very unlikely because they have such a high rarity. But again, maybe you get lucky, and if you have a lot of mythical beasts, this card is nice recovery. And now we come to Hate Trunade or Localized Trunade, what it's called earlier. This card is surprisingly weak. Real way to use this is to prevent your opponent from special summoning their Magnets from the hand after you summoned yours by setting spell and traps, then returning your own spell and traps to your hand so that your opponent cannot special summon their Magnets that easily from their hand. Except this option, this card isn't too great. You don't have to worry about face down spell and traps anyway, so honestly this is more like a side deck card. Next up you have Downbeat, 3/1 face up monster, special summon one from your deck, one monster with the same original type and attribute, but one lower level than the attributed monster's original level. Now you might think this card is pretty good, but there isn't a lot that you can do. Also lower level means lower attack stats in general. There aren't really combos that you can do with it. The best possible thing is activating this on a Mech Knight to special summon another Mech Knight and gets its effect off. I wouldn't play this. Next up we have a very interesting card called Escort. Target one monster in your main monster zone, move that monster you control to another of your main monster zones. This is really funny. You can use this card during your opponent's turn to switch columns with your Mech Knights to think that your opponent could set a spell and trap in the same column as this set card and then just activate it, and your opponent cannot summon their Mech Knights from the hand. You could also use this card in combination with Mikuratori, because you could normal summon Mikuratori kind of like a troll. For example, the middle column, your opponent thinks you're completely stupid, attacks into it, then you chain this card, place it in the most left column, your opponent attacks into this monster, it has now 2300 attack, this monster is destroyed, he takes battle damage, you summon a monster and inflict probably like 4000 additional damage. So that's the option how to use this card, even though it doesn't seem that great. Under certain situations, there are actually cool things that you can do with this. Next we have probably one of the weirdest cards on the sneak that everybody wonders why you would print an effect on a card like that. It's called Role Reversal. This is a short print. Swap both players' life points. Your life points must be higher than your opponent's to activate and resolve this effect. Okay, so why would you use this? There's no reason ever to switch your life points with your opponent's life points. Don't play this. So, Parallel Port Armor. Target one link monster you control, equip it with this card. Your opponent cannot target a equipped monster with card effects. Also, it cannot be destroyed by battle. Now, the graveyard effect of this card is completely useless and very situational. But a monster cannot be destroyed by battle and cannot be targeted. That sounds like a really strong effect. Like, if you get this off on a Flame Administrator or any of your really already strong link monsters, you are pretty safe. Next up, you have Cynet Refresh. This is a trap card that can be activated if your opponent's Cyber's monster clears an attack you can destroy as many monsters in the main monster zone as possible. And if you do during the end phase of the turn, special summon as many Cyber's Link monsters among those monsters in the graveyard as possible to their owner's fields. Now, this is a side deck card against somebody who plays a lot of Cyber's type monsters. This is one of these cards that you can actually side deck, that you can actually put into your main deck after game 1. This is probably the card that you want to side in. This card does not destroy cards in the extra monster zone, only the main monster zone. So keep that in mind. Borrel Refrigeration, tribute 1 rocket monster, then target 1 Borrel Link monster you control, equip this card to its card, it can, and against the following effect, it basically can prevent itself from being destroyed by battle or by card effects. So here's the deal, I don't know if they made a translation mistake, but Tree Burst Blast Dragon doesn't have Borrel in its name. Either this card works with Tree Burst Blast Dragon, because they will translate it different, or it doesn't work with Tree Burst Blast Dragon, and this card is completely useless. Anyway, this card is pretty bad, because even if it works with Tree Burst Blast Dragon, this is a very situational effect. Here we come to a very interesting trap card. This is Tindangle the Laundry. When you take battle damage from opponent's attacking monster where you have 3 or more Tindangle monsters with different names in your graveyard, destroy the attacking monster, and if you do special summon 1 Tindangle Acute Cerberus from your extra deck, if you control no monsters in the extra monster zone. You can banish this card from your graveyard and target 3 Tindangle monsters with different names in your graveyard, special summon them in the face down defense position. If you get this effect off, you win the game. It's that easy. There's nothing that your opponent can do. You get a 3000 beat stack, you get 3 monsters from your graveyard revived, it's absolute game over. This is a very strong card. Just keep an eye on your opponent's graveyard. If they have 3 Tindangle monsters with different names, and if you attack, if your opponent activates this, you should be worried. You should really be worried. Honestly, if you draw a lot of Tindangle monsters, then this is definitely a card that you want to play. Next we have another completely useless card. This is Altergeist Manifestation, a normal trap card that cannot be activated because it special summons Altergeist monsters from the graveyard, and obviously there aren't any Altergeist monsters in the set you can summon. So next card, Whispers of the World Legacy. This card increases the attack and defense of a level 5 or higher monster on the field by 1000. This is one of the few ways to get over huge defensive walls on the sneak peek. This is also one of the few spell and traps in the spell and trap zone that could be face down that you should worry about. Also, if your opponent activates a spell card in the same column as a Magnite monster, you can negate that effect. Now, I would not recommend just activating this whenever you can. Don't waste this. Wait until your opponent has a really strong threat that you cannot get over, like a 3000 defensive wall or a huge attack monster, and attacks into one of your attack position level 5 or higher monsters. Then activate this and destroy it. It's that simple. It's probably one of the best trap cards in the entire set, in my opinion. And next we have World Legacy Secret. This is also one of the best trap cards in the entire set. This is basically Call of the Hunted for level 5 or higher monsters. You can simply special summon them from the graveyard. Also, if your opponent activates a monster effect in the same column as a Magnite monster, you can negate that effect. So if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can chain this, special summon Magnite from the graveyard to the same column as that monster. The effect of that monster is negated. Pretty damn powerful card in my opinion, really strong. You can also special summon monsters from the graveyard that are not Magnite monsters, only level 5 or higher. That's the only restriction, so it's insanely good to recover, to revive your already powerful, strong monsters on the grave. Next up we have Magical Burst. This is a trap card that can amass spell counters to basically add a spell card from your deck to your hand. The only reason why you would play this if you have a lot of Mythical Beasts and you use them for your Mythical Beasts effects. That's the only reason. If you have only like 1 or no Mythical Beasts in your deck at all, don't play this. Next up we have Ghost Trick Redecoration, another useless card. There are no Ghost Trick monsters in the set, no Ghost Trick field spells. Then we have a very interesting card, Archfiend's Call. You can target 1 level 5 or higher fiend monster in your graveyard, discard 1 fiend monster, and if you do special summon the targeted monster, you can only use this effect of Archfiend's Call once per turn. This is really good to special summon Tindangle Intruder or Tindangle Hound from your graveyard by discarding another fiend monster. All the Tindangle monsters are fiends, so this is a pretty good card if you have Tindangle Hound or Tindangle Intruder. Otherwise, I would not play this. Now we come to a very interesting trap card. This is called Sensor Differentiation. Each player can only control one monster with each type, send all other face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. Oh boy, so you cannot special summon 2 monsters with 2 types. This kind of counters multiple Mech Knights. This counters the Tindangle Angel combo. This is a really good card that you want to use if your opponent has a lot of advantage over you and a lot of monsters on their side on the field. And then they have to send monsters on the field to the graveyard and only probably have like 1 or 2 monsters on the field. But honestly, on the sneak, this card is only good against players that have a lot of monsters with the same type. But nevertheless, this card is one of the more useful spell and traps because it's some sort of removal at least. Next up, we can have another column-based trap card, which is called Guidance. You can choose one of your opponent's main monster zones that is unused, and your opponent has to summon his next monster in that main monster zone. The main reason why you want to play this card is force your opponent to normal summon into a certain column, then special summon Mech Knights from your hand. So if you have a lot of Mech Knights, this is a good card to play. Next up, you have Critical Timing. This is a counter trap card that you can use to destroy effects of cards and which a copy of that card is already in the graveyard. What that means is you should not activate cards with effects that are already in your graveyard. Otherwise your opponent can negate them with this card. But honestly, I don't think this card is that great. It's very situational. Then we have Partial Shot. At the end of the battle phase, it becomes the end phase of the turn. Not that particularly good on the sneak peek, honestly, because the main phase 2 and the sneak isn't used that often anyway, so this card isn't that great. And the last trap card is called Exit Detonation and has the effect to destroy one card you control. Obviously really bad effect. The only real use with this is to destroy one of your spell and trap cards and then get its effect off in the graveyard, something like that, or destroy your own artifact during your opponent's turn to special summon it. That's kind of like the only thing that you can do, but besides that, this is a pretty bad card. And next up we have the TCG exclusive cards. This is Card Spirit Yokozuna. We already talked about Card Spirit Kuno-oh, I think was its name, right at the start of this video. This is basically its counterpart. It has the same stats, attribute and level, the same effects, except that it sends monsters in the same column as Pendulum cards you control to the graveyard when it's normal summoned. I think this is a card that you really don't want to play unless you have the other Pendulum scale and you can Pendulum summon this, special summon it as a 2400 beat 6 from your hand. Again, if this is normal summoned or set, it returns to the hand during the end of the turn, so that's a huge drawback. And now we come to the Ventrats. Ventrat Battlelord is sadly a completely useless card, simply because you cannot summon this. So next card, we have Ventrat Core. This card is also completely useless on the sneak, has really awful stats. Again, don't play this. Now the only real reason why you want to use Ventrat Core is in combination with Ventrat Charge, because you can discard one card and special summon one Ventrat monster from your deck. You can then tribute, for example, the Ventrat Core for a tribute summon. But honestly, just playing a really low monster just to get this effect off, in my opinion, is honestly not worth it. I would not recommend playing it. Then we have Ventrat Revolution, another card that's very similar to Ventrat Charge. It kind of revives Ventrat Core from the graveyard. Then you can tribute Ventrat Core, but going -2 just to summon that monster back to tribute summon is not worth it in my opinion. You also have to wait for the rulings if you need a ritual spell in your graveyard to activate this. I think yes, you have to, because it's treated as a cost. In that case, this card is completely useless. Maybe I'm wrong, just ask a judge on the sneak if that's the case. Again, we don't have rulings for this card, so I cannot say this 100% for sure, but this is a really bad card you should probably not play. Now we come to the FA cards. Here we have FA Auto Navigator. This card can fetch a FA field spell from your deck to your hand. Also, it is a tuner. This is important for the next card, which is FA Motorhome Transport. This is a synchro monster. It's level 9. It has amazing stats. Its effect isn't that important. If it's level 11 or higher, it cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. If you get this effect off thanks to the field spell, this is awesome. But in most cases, I honestly wouldn't play the field spell because getting this out is already hard enough. This card is also the only reason why I would play FA Auto Navigator if I had it. Then we have the field spell, FA City Grand Prix. It increases the level of all FA monsters by 2 during the main and battle phase. and they cannot be targeted by card effects. I honestly wouldn't play this card. Even if I have access to the Synchro monster, it's too specific. You just have to play this field spell. It doesn't even allow you to special summon Mekk-Knights from the hand, so honestly, not that great. Next up we have FA Test Run. This is one of the few removable cards on the entire sneak. You have to switch basically your 0 attack Auto Navigator from attack to defense position. So if your opponent normal summons an Auto Navigator in attack position and that's a card, you probably know what it is. It's Test Run. The only reason why I would ever play this is because I have multiple copies of Test Run and multiple copies of Auto Navigator. Because what you could do is just normal summon Auto Navigator, set this, then your opponent does something that you don't like, you just switch the Auto Navigator to defense, destroy your opponent cards, and during your next turn you just banish this card from the graveyard, special summon another Auto Navigator, and then you hopefully have another Test Run to destroy another card. And maybe even have like 2 tributes now on the field that you can use to tribute summon, or maybe to synchro summon, but that's the best use that you can get out of this card. And even though this card destroys an opponent's card, it's bound to one very specific, very bad monster, at least for the sneak peek, so I wouldn't play this. Now we come to the OCG exclusive. There are a lot of Link monsters among them. Perpetual King Archfiend requires 500 life points when each of his then bypass, or otherwise it's destroyed. It also has some random effect to special summon a Fiend type monster from your graveyard, but more or less this is just a Link 2 monster that requires 2 Fiend type monsters, for example 2 Tindangle monsters, and then you can special summon a 2000 beat stack. I would play this if I had multiple Tindangle monsters, obviously, just in case I have like a Tindangle Angel and a Tindangle Apostle on my side on the field, and then I can go into this one. Next we have Curious, the Light Swan Dominion. It requires 2 monsters with the same attribute, for example, or light monsters but different types. So there are a lot of light and dark monsters in the set, so special summoning this 2400 beat stack isn't that much of a deal. It also can set up your graveyard by, for example, sending a Tindangle Intruder from your deck to the graveyard, or for example sending a certain spell or trap to the graveyard, or you could just send a card from your deck to the graveyard that you want to get by its first effect, because if it's destroyed you can also add a card from your graveyard back to your hand. So for example you can use this as some sort of search card. I think this is honestly a really good card you definitely want to play. Probably won't come up too often, but a 2400 beat stack that I could summon like every second or third game doesn't seem too bad to me. Then we have Gem Knight, Phantom Core. It requires 2 gem monsters. There are no gem monsters in the set, so cannot summon this. The same thing with Steel Swarm Origin. There are no Evil Swarm or Steel Swarm monsters in the set, so don't have to worry about this card. Next up we have Assault Two Tails of the Noble Knights. There are, I think, 3 Warrior type monsters in the set. All of them are not worth being played just to summon this one. Next up we have Clifford Genius. It requires 2 machine type monsters, another monster that you can summon in theory, but it's really hard to summon. There are, I think, not a lot of machine, like 3 machine type monsters I think in the set. Basically the best part of this card is that you can negate opponent's effects for like a turn, which is nice. You can negate, for example, annoying opponents' continuous spell or trap cards that prevent you from attacking. This is like the best case where you could use this card to your advantage. But besides that, I would not summon this. Then we have another completely useless Link monster that you cannot summon. Ritual Beast Ultimon Falkos. It requires 2 Ritual Beast monsters. Again, there are no Ritual Beast monsters in the set, so cannot summon this. And then we have Sapphire Metaltron. It requires 2 monsters that are special summoned from the Excode deck. So for example, Pendulum monsters or Link monsters. Honestly, I don't think a lot of people will summon this. 2500 attack for a Link 3 is pretty good. Now the effect of this card doesn't matter too much, it's just a 2500 beat stack, but still nice. But I doubt a lot of people can summon this, because you basically need to summon like 2 Link monsters and then Link summon this. So it's pretty hard to get off. And then we have Heavy Metal Force Electromite. This is a secret rare, one of the most sought after cards from the entire set. This is kind of nice to get your one-off Mythical Beast monsters back to your hand. It's also kind of nice if you have 2 Mythical Beasts on the field, you can just Link summon this and then maybe even special summon Pendulum monsters from your Excode deck. If you have the scale 9, that is actually pretty good. But besides those situations, it's very situational and pretty hard to summon because of the rarity of the Mythical Beast monsters. And then we have the last card, Scramble Egg. Everybody's making fun of this card, everybody gets triggered by this card. This card is completely useless, you cannot use it on the sneak anyway. So yeah, those are all 100 cards from the sneak peek. Thank you so much for watching. This video is so much work, so please, I'm begging you, if you enjoyed this, if you got some useful information out of this video, if you want me to make additional guides in the future, kind of like that for Flames of Destruction, then subscribe to the channel, like this video, share this video, support the channel, and yeah, thanks in advance. Please let me know how your sneak went in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and till next time, bye.